This is the Lobo Pod with the voice of the Lobos, Robert Portnoy.
Hello again, Lobo fans. Welcome into another edition of your Lobo Pod. I'm your host, Robert Portnoy. We go to the gridiron today. We talk Lobo football with brand new Lobo head football coach Jason Eck, and we are presented by Green Summit Landscape Management. Coach Eck, it's great to be with you. First off, thanks for coming in studio. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to be here. Enjoying this nice spring weather here in Albuquerque. Good to get in here and talk a little football.
Yeah, talk a little football. And you were commenting, they're pretty nice digs here for our little pod studio, huh?
Yeah, it's got a good little setup over here, man.
Thanks for coming in and spending time with us. And I'll start with this. Now that you've got 15 spring football practices behind you, what are your thoughts?
Well, excited about the progress we're able to make. I think a lot of it was just figuring this team out, figuring out who we have and, what are our strengths, what are our areas that we got to really improve this summer and fall camp. And, that kind of gives us a guide now of, what our recipe is going to be to win games this fall.
And there's a little bit of the roster development, too, because of the two portals that you potentially could lose a few guys, and you have, and you're going to pick up a few new guys. And I imagine there's an opportunity to fill some holes, but that can make it a little tricky too, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that we're going to find the net positive in this spring portal. I think the winter portal obviously was tough because we lost, even before our staff got here, we lost a lot of the really good players from last year's team. But, really there was only probably one guy that we lost in the spring portal that was going to play a lot. A lot of the guys who left were, seeking opportunity, guys who wanted to go on to try to play more because it didn't look like they were going to play much here, which I think is, very healthy. But we've added some good pieces and, I think we have a lot of players, too, who just really, stood out in the spring and show that they can be really great players for us this year. But you're always trying to find a few finishing pieces to get the roster just right.
Let me follow up on the portal because we have talked about this briefly before, and I'd love to get your thoughts. You've said that you think that ultimately if you could get to just one portal, even if it impacts when and how you conduct spring practice, that would be better for college football. Why?
I think it just allows you to, plan better. It gets at least everybody on one-year contracts, which is, kind of the minimum standard. Our coaches are on one-year contracts. It's kind of the minimum in the pro sports. I guess the NBA is 10-day contracts, but, the NFL, the minimum contract you could have is 1 year where really we've been having 6-month contracts in college football where guys are free to go after 6 months. So I think it will just allow you to earlier know, hey, this is our team for the year and really build around that. So I think that's an exciting development. There was some news that came out yesterday, I think out of the ACC meetings. And we had heard a little bit this at our Mountain West Conference meetings that, as part of the portal moving back, they may tweak the spring ball OTA type segment, where now maybe they give you your traditional 15 spring practices and then 6 OTAs, and you could, maybe move those around, maybe move some later. So if the spring portal ends up being later, or if the single portal window ends up being later in the spring, it gives you more flexibility to have some practices in May and June when you traditionally do not in college. But that's when a lot of the NFL teams are having their OTAs to get guys acclimated if they're, coming in later.
One of the other things that is happening with regard to college athletics, and it obviously is going to have a huge impact on college football, is the potential House settlement that's coming this summer. And Coach, after your spring game, there was a really cool moment. You gave Luke Drizwicki, Lobo place kicker, a scholarship. It was a terrific moment for the team, an unbelievable moment for him, and a long time coming for a 3-year Lobo place kicker. You started your college football career as a walk-on. I think it was your junior year when you got your scholarship. The roster limits that could be part of that House settlement will affect the ability of walk-ons to impact a program. How do you think that will play out, and how do you feel about that?
It certainly is a change. This House settlement, I think, is going to get sorted out. Obviously, it's dragged on. We thought it might be done in April, and it's still not done. But, that will allow you to have a roster limit, which, could be 105, it could be higher, but not a scholarship limit. While that does, I think that will give the ability to some people to try to get up to 100 scholarships. I really think a majority of schools are not going to do that. I think the place that walk-ons have of having some of those guys who have a a chip on their shoulder, something to prove. I think that adds a lot to your locker room. And, I think that's going to always be a target for us with, trying to get a lot of good walk-ons from this state, from New Mexico, guys who have a lot of pride in wearing the Lobo uniform. And I don't know how many teams are going to go over the top with getting away from walk-ons, because I still think it probably, in the age that we have now, you're probably better off, rather than giving your 105th guy a scholarship, is trying to get a walk-on for that spot and then taking that money for that scholarship and trying to give it to one of your best players to try to retain them. So I think it's a little overblown, the impact, because I think a lot of teams will still have that part of the team, and I think that's such a vibrant part of building your team in the locker room that you wouldn't want to get away from that.
Could not agree more. It's going to be interesting and fascinating to see how it plays out. So for a former walk-on at the University of Wisconsin, Coach, I think back to a Rose Bowl when a fellow by the name of Ron Dane, one of the greatest college football players ever, your final season, I believe, you guys win just the second Rose Bowl in the history of Wisconsin's program. You beat nationally ranked UCLA team as a ranked Wisconsin team. But take us back, put us in the helmet. What are the memories like? Yeah,
that was a great experience. That was a great UCLA team. Cade McNown was their quarterback, and Freddie Mitchell at receiver, and they had Chris Ferris, who won the Outland Trophy that year. I mean, they really had a heck of a team. And I think we were, 7-8 point underdogs going to that game. And, Ron, was incredible, like he always was. I was actually just talking last week to the coach at Hawaii, Coach Chang, and, he had memories of seeing Ron had a big game in Hawaii when we went over there in 2000. And I think he was either a young player, maybe a freshman that year. And he was such a great player. And we, a good recipe that I've still carried. We ran the ball, played good defense, played good special teams, and we were able to pull the upset. And I think Coach Alvarez always had a great knack for, putting together a good plan how to win a game.
Coach X offensive line helped Ron Dane tie a modern college football record with 4 touchdowns in that Rose Bowl. And then he came up 1 yard short of the Rose Bowl rushing record set by a fellow named Charlie White at USC back in 1980. That's some pretty heady company.
Yeah, no, he was a great player. Now, truth be told, most of the times when I got to block for Ron, it was in practice because I was a backup. So I usually I was blocking at the end of the games after Ron had already had 200 yards, and now we were running out the clock in the fourth quarter. But I had some good memories. We're going to San Jose State this year, and that'll be my first time back in that stadium. That's where I played my first college snaps, was a game against San Jose State where we had a pretty good lead and got to play the end of the third quarter, fourth quarter against those guys.
Trip down memory lane. What was it like playing for a legend like Barry Alvarez?
I just learned so much. I mean, I think anytime you're exposed to something for the first time, such as college football, you learn so much. And I was under him for 4 years as a player, and then 3 years as a graduate assistant. So really, probably my whole basis of what I know about football and what I know of college football came from Coach Alvarez. And I think there's a lot of things that I took from him. I think he always instilled confidence in his players. Always did a good job of telling the team what to expect and just being really honest with the guys. And I think the guys really developed a great trust and belief in him because of that. So really did a tremendous job taking a program that had been down when he got there and building it back up. And, really that's probably something that's inspired me, that it makes it exciting to take over programs that have been struggling and you have a chance to make them better.
As a former O-lineman and O-line coach, the roots are in the run game, as Coach Eck talked about. Perfect time for us to talk about the mid-zone. Over the past couple of seasons, the Lobo fans have sort of gotten familiar with the outside zone, but I know the run game is so important to you, Coach. Give us a little X's and O's. We can Google it, but hearing it from you would be much better. What exactly is the mid-zone in terms of the blocking and the run game that you plan to use?
We're really trying to stretch the defense and then puncture vertical. So it's not really a play where we're designing it to get outside, but we're trying to really give the illusion that we're trying to stretch the field, trying to get some lateral displacement through the D-line, and then look for our backs to do a good job of kind of pressing that landmark out by the tackle and tight end, but then sticking their foot in the ground and get north and south. And I think we're pretty fortunate. We got a good backfield. I think our running back room is probably the most talented position group on our whole team. I think Scottrey Humphrey was tremendous this spring, and I saw it from coaching against him the last couple of years. Damon Bankston really had a good spring, and then we got some guys like DJ McKinney and Day Buchanan, who battled some injuries this spring, but really have also proven to be really good backs at the college level. So really excited about that room and what they bring to the table.
Let's start with Humphrey. Lobo fans kind of have PTSD with regard to Scottre because he and Montana State really put it on New Mexico early in the season last year.
It's ironic, we don't have a lot of our production returning from last year's team when it comes to rushing yards and receiving yards. So the guy in our team right now who has the most yards in University Stadium rushing is a guy who did it in another uniform with, I think Scottre had like 140-some yards that game. But no, he's a great player. And again, we recruited him out of high school, out of Rainier Beach, a great high school program in Seattle. They had a first-round draft pick out of his high school that he was teammates with this year. Connerly, a big tackle from Oregon. And, ironically, we were recruiting him and Day at the same time. We were only going to take one back. And really, we just said, hey, whoever would commit first, we're going to take. And Day committed first pretty early. And then Scottre ends up going to Montana State. But, saw him play up close and personal. He had a great game against us last year. And, when he became available, really was a guy we targeted and attacked, and we're very excited to get here. And there was no buyer's remorse. He lived up to billing this spring. He had a great spring for us.
And, of course, you brought Day with you from Idaho here to Albuquerque. Let's flip it to the defensive side, Coach. And we hear the 4-2-5. We saw it during the spring. We know there's a rush end who can do a little bit of that and maybe even can drop a little bit into coverage, kind of a hybrid type guy. And there's even a hybrid safety / linebacker type of guy that you want to be big and strong and fill in the middle there and come up to the line of scrimmage and run support. Tell us what your 4-2-5 looks like.
Well, we want to be multiple because I think it's important to try to create some blocking errors on the O-line, where they get confused things. And, we're going to pressure people. I think we do a pretty good job of attacking and trying to dictate to the offense by getting them off balance, creating some lost yardage plays. I thought we did a good job of that on defense this spring. I think our defensive ends will be a strength of our defense. Darren Agu really had a good spring, and he's the Vanderbilt transfer, really improved. Keyshawn James Newby, who was an All-American for us at Idaho last year, came down. He was limited this spring after an off-season surgery, but expecting great things for him. He's really a proven player. He played very well in our 2 FBS games last year when I was at Idaho. He had 2 sacks versus Oregon and 3 against Wyoming. So those were great litmus tests for, which of the guys who are ready to move up a level, and he certainly was. Xavier Slayton really filled in and was kind of going at the other starting end this spring, who came down from Idaho as well. But he's a really versatile guy who does a nice job. So I think that's going to be a strength of our team. And then, you talk about that hybrid, we call it the star position, which is kind of a hybrid linebacker safety. Albert Nunez, who came here from Northern Iowa, really had a good spring there. And then David Murphy, a name that Lobo fans will remember from up in Rio Rancho. He really had a good spring as well. He's really a smart football player. And those are some of the guys you'll look to see in that spot.
Lobo fans would love to get an update on your son, the linebacker. How's he doing?
He's good. He's pretty much fully cleared now. I think they're still going to just watch his volume now to make sure he's not overdoing it early. But last week they had some team running the last day before we took a 3-week break, and he was doing everything and should be fully cleared and ready to go. So excited to get him back, and I think him and Dimitri Johnson give us 2 inside linebackers who have a lot of experience and have played a lot of football. So I think those guys will really be strong together at the Mike and Will spot. And then, you have some good, veteran guys as well. Randolph Kapai, is a good player who's experienced, who I think, even if he ends up in a backup role, will still rotate in. And then Elijah Brody, a local guy from West Mesa, he really had a good spring. He was probably the biggest beneficiary of Jackson being out this spring. He got a lot of reps, and just being a redshirt freshman and a guy who this was his first spring playing linebacker, he has a lot of upside that I think can really develop. And it's exciting when you have a homegrown Albuquerque guy with a lot of potential that we can develop here over time.
Coach hit the nail on the head there regarding Brody. I wanted to ask about how you guys got to that position change.
It's really just his natural progression as he gets bigger. I think he hasn't really been on a designed weight gain plan, but I think he played his senior year of high school at like 185, 190, and then when we got here, he was already 215. and then just watching him move around. And he was able to put on another 10 pounds this spring. So he's about 225 right now. So, not to say you can't play safety at 225, but you're like an outlier in the NFL, at 225-pound safety. So I think his body is just naturally growing, and he's maturing. He's done a great job with Coach Heim. We're really trying to invest in our nutrition for our athletes. So it was more of just his natural progression of his body type. And he's a physical guy. I mean, he'll come and hit you. I know our running backs probably had a few times where they were shaking their head after trying to take him on in blitz protection and stuff. He's a physical player.
Great stuff. Okay, so the big question, I know for you, for all Lobo fans, for us sitting here, for Coach Eck, is what is the scenario at quarterback? We know that you brought Jack Lane with you, and if you look back at those 7 games that he played last year, really 6 full games, nearly 1,500 pass yards, a 14-4 touchdown to INT ratio. But, Coach, he only threw passes in your first spring practice. Then he had to be held out because of the elbow. How's he doing, and when can he get back on the field at a full capacity, you hope?
Jack's improving. He's starting to throw a little bit. I think the big thing with Jack is he's got a tremendous work ethic, and probably is one of the hardest workers on our team. But, sometimes he can overdo it. So we got to really do a good job of keeping him on a pitch count this summer and in fall camp to keep him healthy, because that really, it wasn't like a tear or anything. It was just really an overuse injury that put some stress on the tissues in there. So he's looking better. It really was probably a blessing in disguise for James Lobstein, who I think really had a nice spring for us and really improved. And, I think Jack, having reps in our system had an advantage going into that, but I think that's been negated a little bit. James getting so many reps through the spring, especially, at the end of spring, we only had 2 quarterbacks who were getting reps. He really flourished and took on. So I think we're going to have a good competition between those 2 guys. And then we're going to bring in a transfer as well from UConn, Cole Welliver, who will get here this summer. So that'll be interesting to see how well he picks it up. He's got a very strong arm, but, doesn't have any college experience. So it's a talented room. I think that competition will go on in fall camp, and that's something we'll have to do a really good job of the first couple weeks of fall camp, is really nailing down who's going to be the starter.
And you've got a lefty, Gabe Machenbacher, who's in the mix as well, don't you?
Yeah, Gabe had a nice spring as well. I think he was a beneficiary of getting a lot of reps. And we'll see how it goes. He still has a redshirt year available. He played 1 year of junior college football, so we'll see how he fits. And I think unless he becomes the starter or we have injuries, he may be a guy we try to keep at 4 games and preserve that way. And then a really talented young freshman coming in, Toa Favai, who I think will be our most athletic of our 5 quarterbacks, really a fast, dynamic athlete that I think could give us a little different element, using the quarterback run game and things like that.
Quick follow-up on Jack Lane. It's exciting to hear that he's doing a little bit of throwing again now as we talk here in May. Is the anticipation that he'll be able to take that first snap once fall camp starts?
Yeah, no, he should be great. And I think even when we get back in June, when the players are doing some 7-on-7 on their own, and we could throw routes on air with our coaches in the summer, I think he'll be back for a lot of that stuff. We just got to make sure we keep, like baseball does, keep him in the pitch count. I may have to go talk to Coach Brown about how you manage that to make sure we keep him at the right pitch count to not overuse his arm.
He definitely will know elbows. I can tell you that.
Yes.
Great stuff from Coach Eck there. Okay, we talked about the running back room. Those quarterbacks have to have somebody to throw the football to, and I was certainly excited. I know you were at the very end of camp to get a wideout healthy who could be a difference maker, couldn't he, Coach?
Yeah, I think Keegan Johnson has a chance for a breakout year. And he's had, I think 2 or 3 years where he's been in that, 25 to 30 catch rate range. But I think he really asserted himself through the second half of spring as our number 1 receiver and a guy that we're going to want to get the ball to a lot. And then, a good supporting cast. I thought Sean Miller really had a good spring. I think he got a little bit in the doghouse and didn't play a lot as the year went on last year, but he's a really hard worker, a very talented young man. Kadir Diop really had a nice spring as well. I think he's our best blocker at receiver, which, if we're going to be good running the ball, which I believe in, that's a way to win my heart over when you're a really good blocking receiver, and he's tough and competitive and physical. And then Buckley, did a nice job as well. I think he showed a knack for getting open. So I think those 4 guys will be the core of our receiving group right now. But I think Keegan really, like I said, accelerated and kind of clearly showed himself to be the number one guy as spring went on.
Wanted to ask this regarding quarterback play in your system, Coach. What are the most important traits for a quarterback to have in your offense?
I think accuracy, number one. I think Coach Schleissner, and I have really, designed a pretty efficient passing game that's simple. So when you get guys open, you got to make sure you hit them. You got to make good decisions. We have a lot of progression-based things where you're going, from 1 to 2 to 3, down to a check down, and you got to make good decisions on seeing things right and taking the proper guy, and then leadership and being able to extend some plays. Because I think when you have games where, we'll have this year, when you have a game like Michigan or UCLA, you're not going to have just perfect pockets, every play to throw in. And even if you're not winning all 5 of your one-on-one battles with the O-line up front, if you have a quarterback who can, extend it, make maybe the first guy who gets pressure miss and get out and do things, that really can make a difference and make the guys around you better.
That's right leading into my follow-up. Coach Schleissner said, it's not an offense necessarily where there's a lot of designed quarterback run, but the ability to improvise a little bit when the pocket breaks down. You want to be able to do some things on the move to make plays down the field or maybe take off and pick up a first down.
No question. And we'll always fit it to our offense. Again, I wouldn't be opposed if we have the right guy of having the quarterback, run game be a part of that. There was times we did that when Coach Slice and I were together at South Dakota State, and we used the quarterback in the run game. But probably out of the current quarterback room we have, maybe Toa would be the only guy for the future who I could see doing that more of. But this year it's not a huge deal because I think with our running back room, you want to get the ball in those guys' hands a lot.
Is there something coming out of spring in particular that stands out for you as something that you sort of need to get shored up, or something that needs work, or something that you're going to definitely address through the summer heading into fall camp?
A lot of things. Things that stand out. I think we got to keep developing our tight end room. I thought Dorian Thomas and Cade Keith really had good springs and showed improvement. But we got to keep bringing those guys along. We signed a transfer there as well, Simon Mappa, who was at Cal this spring. So I think that's a room we got to keep developing and growing. I think we got to keep developing the back end. We have some real good candidates back there, but you got a guy like Tavian Combs who's played some football here and played I think 700 snaps way back in 2021, but has had some injuries and. He was a little limited in the spring where we really couldn't give him full reps as we're kind of getting him back and building that confidence. And we got to see. We got to see how many reps is he going to be able to play. We're going to have a rotation at that spot. I think we have some corners who missed some time with injuries this year. Jaden Sheridan and Frankie Edwards, both missed part of spring. I think those guys, we got to really do a good job of evaluating in camp. Can they push our starters right now who are Abe Williams and John Johnson coming out of spring? So there's definitely some things there. Then, we got to keep refining special teams. I think Luke did a great job, kicking the ball, and this is very consistent. I think at the punter position, Charles really showed potential and had some great punts, but he's got to improve his consistency. So that'll be a competition between him, and we're looking at some candidates to come in and compete with him for that job. So there's definitely some moving pieces and a lot of things that we're going to focus on targeting and improving. But really, we're looking for general improvement of every aspect as well.
Before we started the pod, Coach mentioned that as a very young kid, he moved from his birthplace of La Crosse, Wisconsin, to Peoria, Illinois. There's a fabulous story of how you became a Cubs fan, Coach, and I'd love for you to share that with the fans.
I was going to kindergarten back then. You had half-day kindergarten, so I went to morning kindergarten, and I would come home, and my routine usually would be, come home, have lunch. My mom made me lunch, and then I'd watch some cartoons. Scooby-Doo was my favorite cartoon, and once in a while, then you got into spring, Scooby-Doo started getting preempted on WGN in Illinois there because the Cubs were on. And that's how I became a Cubs fan, from watching those games back as a kindergartner when Scooby-Doo was preempted for the Cubs game, listening to Harry Carey and Ron Stone. And they had some really good teams back then.
And continuing along those lines, you and your father, Jay, and a moment with Harry Carey led to an incredible experience for you back in 1984.
Yeah, it was September of '84. I was probably a first grader at the time, and I got a chance to. He ran into a newspaper reporter from Peoria who he had known when he was an assistant coach there. My dad was coaching at Pitt in the Big East at the time.
Basketball coach,
and we were able to get some passes, press passes that got us down in the locker room after the game in Pittsburgh at old Three River Stadium. So after the Cubs clinched the pennant, the NL East back then, we were in the locker room getting autographs from the guys, meeting the players, and was quite the experience.
And you actually can see yourself with your father in some old footage?
Yeah, there's some old footage. I think for the 30-year anniversary, they were playing that game on WGN, and you can see us in the locker room there. Leon Durham, their first baseman, poured a Rolling Rock beer over my head at 7 years old, so I don't know if
that was your first beer?
That was my first beer.
That's great stuff. The NLCS didn't work out perfectly for Leon, though, did it?
No. It was the Padres had a good comeback in that series and dashed the Cubs' hopes. I had to wait about 32 years till I think 2016 when they finally got the World Series done.
But in that experience, you got some autographs, some FaceTime with some legends, including a Hall of Famer, Ryan Sandberg.
Ryan Sandberg, he was my favorite player growing up, and that was neat when I was coaching at Idaho. He was from Spokane, Washington, which is pretty close to Moscow, Idaho. So I went up there recruiting, and his high school was not very hot with prospects. So I was looking at other guys in Spokane, but I made sure I went by that school because I wanted to see the little shrine they had in the hallway to Ryan Sandberg at North Central High School in Spokane, Washington. I
got a chance to meet him when he was managing the Iowa Cubs. Tremendous player, coach, human being. Coach Eck, that's an awesome experience. One of the things that we love to do in our pods, especially with our new coaches, is do a little thing that I call loosely rapid fire, where I ask you some fun stuff, and it gives fans a chance to get to know you a little bit better. So I start off with the easy lead off, red or green?
I was saying Christmas at first, but my wife and I were talking about it. I think we said Christmas because it kind of sounded cool, but we're really green. We love green chili. What
is the thing you most like to put green chili on?
I really enjoy pizza with pepperoni and green chilies.
Just had a Dion's pizza last night with green chili on it.
We got that. That was Mother's Day night. That's what my wife wanted to get. We had pizza from Dion's.
That's perfect. Okay. Do you have an NFL team?
I do not. I end up rooting for players and coaches that I know, but really don't have watch a lot of the games like a coach, or I'm analyzing it, so I really don't have a team I root for.
Did you have some childhood heroes though in the league when you were a kid, or some players that you really looked up to?
Yeah, I had. I think this goes back about the age that I was living in Illinois. I had an old Walter Payton football set with a jersey and a Bears helmet and things. He was one of my favorite players growing up.
Being a basketball family, do you have an NBA team?
Really don't have an NBA team either. My kids are pretty big into it. The NBA playoffs have been hot at the Eck household. And
do they have a favorite team?
Well, my 22-year-old son Quentin really likes the Nuggets. He's a big Jokic fan, so they're not looking great here. They're behind in their series, and
but they're headed back home.
Yeah, headed back home. So my son Jackson, who's on our team, he's a big LeBron fan. So we have a lot of Michael Jordan versus LeBron conversations in our house. But so I think he always roots for the Lakers now because LeBron's there.
Was there a college program that you rooted for as a kid?
When I was a kid, I was a Notre Dame fan. And ironically, when Lou Holtz was there at Notre Dame, and they won the national title in '88. I think I was, probably 11 years old. And
Tony Rice, the quarterback?
Tony Rice, and they had great backs, Rocket Ishmael, Tim Brown, a lot of great players. And I was a Catholic school kid growing up. And then ironically, my sister ended up going there. My sister's a Notre Dame grad, my younger sister. And then I didn't even know this at the time because when you're a kid, you don't know who the assistant coaches are. But then I ended up playing for Coach Alvarez, who was the D coordinator for Lou Holtz on that '88 team. And there was a few other coaches, Brian White, Jay Hayes, who were on the staff at Wisconsin, who were assistants on that Notre Dame team as well.
That's so cool. Steak or seafood guy, or both?
I like both, but usually prefer steak. If I'm going out there, medium rare, filet, that's my favorite.
Okay. Do you have a favorite seafood if you're going to go that way?
I like lobster. I like shrimp. I like scallops. I like it all. But if I'm going to a nice steakhouse, usually my starting point is a medium rare filet.
If you're on an island, you've got one meal left. Is the filet it, or is there something else?
I think so. I think that's what I go to. My wife and I really like Brussels sprouts, so we probably get a little side of those good Brussels sprouts.
Do you have a favorite breakfast cereal, or what's the breakfast food of choice?
I'm a cereal guy. I like Life a lot. Cinnamon Life cereal, excellent.
That's absolutely in our cabinet. How do you like your eggs?
I like them over hard.
Okay, yeah, I'm an over medium guy. If you could share a meal with a legendary sports figure, historical one or current one, or doesn't have to be a sports figure. It could be a political figure or something. If you could sit down and spend an hour and a half over a meal with them, get a chance to pick their brain and get to know them. Is there a figure, a famous figure that you'd love to talk to?
It'd probably be, a coach. If Bill Walsh was still around, I think he'd be a great guy to have one. Belichick would be a good one. He's pretty busy right now. He's got a lot of distractions in his life, so I don't know if he'd be able to free up for a dinner. But
a few distractions.
Yeah, probably a great coach and trying to pick their brain. Maybe Phil Jackson did such a good job with the Chicago Bulls and controlling that. But probably a coach like that to pick their brain on some leadership things.
A few distractions. That was diplomatically put. Cake or ice cream or a la mode?
Cake and ice cream. And what I really like is I like a chocolate chip cookie warmed up with ice cream on top. That's
outstanding.
That's my favorite dessert.
Go-to fruit?
Bananas.
Bananas. What about apples or oranges?
Prefer oranges, but I like the ones that are like the clementines or like the
little ones.
They're easy to peel.
Love that. Yep. I want my food to be easy too. What sports? How many different sports did you play as a kid? I'll bet basketball was a big deal until maybe the body got a little bigger.
Yep. I like to say I was my body became more of a pulling guard than a shooting guard, so I went to football. But I played basketball growing up, had a lot of fun with that. I played baseball growing up. Really, those were the main ones. When I was really young, I played soccer as well, but those were really the sports I played growing up. I played like baseball and basketball kind of through junior high, and then focused on football in high school. But when I was really young, soccer as well.
What positions in those other sports?
Soccer, I played a lot of defender or goalie. Baseball, I played some, first base, third base, left field, right field. And then, in basketball, it's probably a forward usually or center.
Do you have a favorite movie? Maybe one as a kid and now as an adult, it maybe changed as your taste changed.
I really like this movie called The Departed. It's about like the Irish mob in Boston. That's a really good movie. Not a huge movie guy. I like football movies as well. I always get a kick out of those. I watched the one that I watched recently was we talked about walk-ons earlier. That story of Burlsworth that the walk-on trophy is named after. I thought that was a great movie. We showed that one to the team in fall camp last year, and I thought that was just a touching movie. Is
there a show that recently or within the past year, maybe when you had some down moments that you shared with your wife that you guys really enjoyed?
We're in the middle of watching Breaking Bad right now. I had never watched it, and everyone would ask me that when I said I was coming here. I told people, "Have you watched Breaking Bad?"
What do you think so far?
It's riveting television.
Unbelievable, right?
It kind of draws you in. We're kind of at the beginning of season 5 right now, and it's interesting. I remember you have some surreal moments. Like I went for a walk, around campus and around downtown, and I'm walking by the Crossroads Motel, and I said, "That's from the show. I remember that hotel."
Exactly right.
You have some of those moments right off the interstate.
You drive by the dam. Oh yeah, that's where a few drug deals went down. You go by the car wash. Yeah, it's amazing stuff. Favorite candy bar?
I don't know if I really have a favorite candy bar. I try to stay away with them when I can, but probably like Halloween time. I still got some trick or treaters at home. The ones I might sneak out of their stash would be either a Twix or a Reese's peanut butter cup.
Okay, what's on the AirPods? If you're ever listening to something, what might we hear?
You know what? I try to stay young, so there's some music. We try to have music at practice a lot because the players like that. I think brings good energy and things. So
what genre?
Well, it ends up being a lot of hip hop. Once in a while, a little country for guys. Once in a while, a little rock, but probably hip hop's the most stuff. So I might throw a little, G-Eazy on there. I actually got a chance to see him in concert there.
Tell us about that.
It was a good experience. Got to, say hello to him. He was nervous that night because he was a Warriors fan, and they were in Game 7 that night.
Which they won.
So he was happy about that. But no, it was a good experience, and just kind of enjoying things that are out there at Albuquerque. And there's a lot of great things to do in this community, which is great. I've enjoyed that being in a little, larger market than I'd been in the last probably 10 years of my life. So that was a good opportunity. And then, I like listening to some podcasts and sports radio. I've been listening. I was listening to Cow and Cowherd as I drove over here today to see you guys, on the radio. So I'll listen to some podcasts and things that way too.
If we could get a window back into the elementary school classroom, was young Jason a front of the class guy, a back of the classroom guy, or just kind of, found a way into the middle there and tried to blend in?
These are one of these things, Rob. I'm getting so old. I don't know if I even remember where I sat back then. I went to a Catholic school. We might have had assigned seats back then. So try to sit near the front now, but I can't remember.
Can't remember back then.
Yeah.
Okay, this has just been fantastic, Coach Eck. Really have enjoyed it, and we're excited to see what things are going to look like come August 30th in the big house. And I guess if you want to take a moment, look right into that camera right there, make an appeal to Lobo fans to come out and see the 2025 New Mexico Lobo football team.
Hey, Lobo Nation, we're going to give you something to be proud of this year. This team is going to fight their tails off for you. It's going to be a fun team to watch. You're going to see a lot of fun between our coaches and players in the sideline, really competing and trying to represent you guys the best we can. So it's going to be something special. You'll want to be a part of it. Make sure you get to University Stadium next year. Get your tickets. Going to be a lot of fun in there, and keep December open for a bowl game this year.
Coach Eck, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Rob.
Jason Eck, Lobo head football coach, presented by Green Summit Landscape Management on the Lobo Pod.
The Lobo Pod is a production of UNM Athletics.